All right, mates, welcome back to the channel. JL Scott Fishing. Hope everybody's doing well. I want to cover a little topic real quickly. New regulations are out for Maryland and Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. For most of the region, the new regs have come out here in January for 2023. One of the regulations I want to remind everybody of, because it's still wintertime fishing, and lots of mates have asked me plenty of questions about Alabama rig fishing, okay? And that is probably one of the techniques that is the most heavily regulated, with a broad range of disparity among the states in terms of how you can present an Alabama rig. Some of you may refer to them as umbrella rigs or A-rigs, or just absolute fish catchers. There's a reason why, one could argue, it's been removed from major professional fishing tours, okay? And some have argued that maybe live scope will be next. For the same reasons, right? Like, if you can have live scope that's going to put you on fish, a ton of fish, okay, in these tournaments, but you can't use an Alabama rig at the Bassmaster Classic. You can't use the Alabama rig, Bassmaster events, MLF events, right? Like, it makes you wonder, like, what's the next natural progression of this? Now, earlier in, like, late November, December, when MLF came out with some of their stuff for this season, it appeared as though they were going to allow the Alabama rig to come back in some capacity. But evidently, they just went back and changed the wording, I think. I'll do a deep dive in that. Waiting for some feedback from one of the professional anglers on the MLF circuit to get back with me on that, on what was actually said in the angler meetings with MLF about that issue, because it seemed like they changed the wording of it again to prohibit it. But for those of you who live in Maryland, understand that Maryland has one of the strictest regulations when it comes to the Alabama rig. Okay? I don't know if y'all are aware, but the strictest state in the country is actually New Hampshire, where you can't fish the Alabama rig no matter what, unless they've changed their regulations. In Maryland, you can only have a 2-hook limit. And that's really standard for 2 hooks per line, right? For Maryland, if you read the Maryland regulations. And most people are not aware of that. I can attest to the fact I've seen guys and had mentioned it to them, hey, look, I'm nobody's mama, okay? You can mention stuff to people and they can blow you off, tell you to F off, tell you to get out of here, whatever all they want, until they see that nice green freaking truck. And that's what I've seen happen, especially at places like Dam 4 on the Upper Potomac, because that's a great place to throw an Alabama rig. But if you're throwing an Alabama rig with 5 hooks, 5 swim baits, and all that blade, it's kind of hard to miss. You come up on someone behind somebody throwing that, it's kind of hard to miss. It's kind of hard to miss if you're, DNR and you got binoculars and you can see what a guy is throwing. And it happens. And it's one of those things where you're gonna get pinched over it and get fined and get that little piece of paper. Because in Maryland it is only 2. Now, there's always been that argument, and I kind of have never really gotten. Some things are very subjective, okay? A lot of times. Some of it depends on the conservation officer. I mean, we see that a lot with policing. Because when you fish a place like the Upper Potomac, or say a mountain reservoir that has West Virginia on one side, Maryland on the other, West Virginia on one side of the Potomac, Maryland on the other, Virginia on one side of the Potomac, Maryland on the other. Whereas licensing and all that's reciprocal a lot of times, how do you handle these regulations? Maryland is 2-hook. Virginia and West Virginia is 5-hook. Okay? So I've been told, and again, you get told a lot of things, and sometimes it's subjective from different people. I've been told that in terms of the Upper Potomac, it will matter in terms of whether or not you can throw 2 or 5 hooks, depending upon where your fishing license is. So if you have a Maryland fishing license and you're on the Upper Potomac, you have to abide by the 2-hook method. If you have a Virginia fishing license on the Potomac, you can throw 5. Now, whether or not that's actually true or not, I don't know, because I've been told 2 different things by 2 different officers from 2 different states. So it's a matter of, where, I mean, some people say no, it's your boat, whatever boat ramp you launch from. Some people say it's your license, whatever. But the best thing to do and to understand is to know your regulations. I posted on the Facebook page, JL Scott Fishing, the Maryland regulations. I will post Virginia and West Virginia and Pennsylvania, any changes that they've had to their freshwater and title, if it's appropriate, to those things. So you are aware of changes that have happened. Now, this is something probably that the Black Bass Advisory Committee between Maryland and Virginia should take up. Why is Virginia 5? You can throw 5, actually you can throw more than 5, but, we're known as 5. But you can only use throw 2 in Maryland. So what's the logic behind that? What's the reason why Maryland hasn't made changes? Like Pennsylvania made changes a few years back. Okay, I think they were 3 and now they're 5. Delaware is 3. Maryland is 2. Okay, New Jersey is 5, except for on the Delaware River. I think the Delaware River or portions thereof of the Delaware River are 3. So it begs the question, like, could be to protect certain species. I know Maryland wanted to protect the rockfish and striper and all that years ago, and so it begs the question as to, okay, well, maybe that should be a tidal regulation, maybe not an impoundment reservoir regulation that doesn't have rockfish or striper rockfish in it. Like, so be interesting to see. Maybe Thomas from Fishing the DMV can ask one of those guys from the Maryland DNR or the biologist what the real reason is behind only allowing 2 hooks on the A-rig. Now, obviously, most people will continue to throw a five style Alabama rig with decoys as long as you don't. I know people that have clipped hook on certain that have actually in Maryland that have actually clipped the actual hooks off of jig heads. They modify these things any number of ways because you kind of have to. Because there's very few that are selling a 2 and a blade. There are a few, 2 and a blade or 2 and a couple blades for your Alabama rig for Maryland anglers. Now, Maryland is not the only one with a 2-hook limit. Okay, there are approximately Arizona, Hawaii, Iowa, Kansas, Maryland, Massachusetts, Nevada, North Dakota, and Vermont all have a 2-hook limit. Okay, so in our region, it's basically Maryland. All right, we're like one of the only ones here on the coastal plain that has this regulation happening. Again, let's ask why, and whether or not we want to change it, because we have to have a voice. We want to have a voice. We should have a voice, right? So, and have it be explained to us as to why our brethren across the river, all the way up to Potomac, can throw 5s and more than 5 hooks, have more than 5 hooks, and we can only have 2. Okay, states with a 3-hook limit: California, Colorado, Delaware, Indiana, Missouri, Ohio. Pretty close to home. Oregon, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Tennessee. That one surprised me that they're 3, to be honest. Just saying. Utah, Washington, Wisconsin, and Wyoming all have a 3-hook limit. Okay? Obviously, Alabama and Arkansas have a 5-hook limit, right? And so it's interesting to see. What I didn't mention in this listing was Florida. No limit in Florida. Georgia, no limit. Which means they're throwing all kinds of stuff, right? Unless those regulations change for 2023. But as of 2022, the listing is showing no limit in Florida, no limit in Georgia. Sorry, Maine evidently is 1 hook still. Go figure. Maine and Minnesota. Go figure. Like, that kind of sucks. South Carolina, no limit. And I need to double check that. And that's why I'm on this topic, because it actually came up came up fishing recently, during wintertime fishing. And just people just don't know the laws. And it's like, look, you can about people fish without licenses. People don't follow the rules and don't care. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's the way it is. You're going to get pinched. You're going to get pinched. You're going to pay a fine. You're going to fine. You want to have your license revoked? You're going to get your license revoked. But I feel compelled to be that guy. Like, I'll catch shit for it. I know a lot of times, and I do for a lot of stuff on the YouTube channel. Because people don't want to hear stuff. But it doesn't mean that they shouldn't abide by. You can bitch all you want about rules and regulations, okay? But until you change the rules and regulations, you got to abide by them in good faith. If not, you're doing everybody a disservice because you're the reason why these laws exist because you can't follow the laws, okay? And so South Carolina has no limit, and that's a big deal. Going to Lake Murray, okay? And so packing some stuff out and looking at your swim baits, looking at your jig heads, looking at your rigs, making sure you got the right rod, making sure you make your rod modification. What I mean by that is I'm like, that you fish an Alabama rig for a couple hours, don't matter whether you're fishing Lake Anna, doesn't matter whether you're fishing Lake Murray, a bigger water, open water, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna feel it. Okay? So you gotta modify your rods a little bit. You definitely want to have, if you don't have a bigger rod, 7.6 or above, big rod, and you're going to try and swing it with, a smaller rod, this stuff is going to impact your body, and plus you want to have a longer handle, than maybe you normally would, on a rod, and modify that handle. Me, I wrap if I know I'm going to fish the A-rig, which I predominantly only do it in the wintertime when I do it, is I'll wrap my handle on a 7.6, 7.8, I'll wrap the handle, have basically like cushion, okay? I'll wrap the handle and then basically homer that shit up with electrical tape, so I got a little bit more, because you don't need the feel, mates. Like you don't on an Alabama rig fishing, you don't need that. At least in my experience, you don't need that sensitivity, okay? Like feeling it, you know what I'm saying? Just let them, let them take it and then retrieve. Like, kind of like, don't go the heavy, okay? Hook set, because you're not going to get it. And so that's just some things that I've seen, but the most important thing is to, like, when you're traveling, in and around the region, or in this case, outside the region, especially if you're going to someplace new, make sure that you always check the rules and regulations for that state, because they are so different, and you don't want to deal. Most people only worry about the licensing. Is my license reciprocal, right? So this state or that state or this lake or this river or whatever. But they're not really paying that much attention to the rules different. Like, there's a lot of rules, mates. When I have conversations with, old timers that educate me on a lot of the live bait fish rules. Like, you can't even, some places you can't even fish with crayfish anymore. You can't fish with head-on crayfish in Maryland. Like, you got to take the head off if you're using that as bait, right? You can't even have crayfish in your possession in Maryland. So you can't remove them from the river, right? Like, just weird, like, stuff, shad and herring regulations in terms of what you can do in terms of, like, cut bait and all this kind of stuff. Or like in Virginia, or actually, what are you, Maryland? Yeah, it's Maryland, I guess. Like, along the Potomac, there are creeks where, you can't throw minnows. You can't throw stuff. Like, okay? And if you're just rolling up there in your boat and rolling up in there on your kayak or whatever, in a tournament, that stuff's not going to be put in your tournament. Your tournament rules are going to say, must abide by all state and local. That's all they say, right? You need to know what the state and local laws are. So you roll up in that creek. Most tournaments, you're not allowed to use live bait anyway. But you get what I'm saying. If you're recreational fishing, you roll up in that creek and you're throwing, fatheads and you're throwing, and they roll up on you. And as a matter of fact, there have been people you don't even have to be having it on a hook. If you got live bait in some of these places in your boat, on your kayak, you will get hit with a ticket. Right? So it's important to know the regulations. I just wanted this video because it came up, because also I was packing some stuff out and making sure I had everything, and it came back to mind, that event. I don't know inevitably what happened to those guys. I do know when I was leaving Dam 4, sure enough, you're gonna run into an officer at Dam 4. Okay, it's just a matter of time. It's a popular spot on the Potomac River, and you think you're fine because I've heard stories. You think you're fine, and then you roll up in on your ramp downriver, and the truck's sitting there waiting for you. Okay, and because there's only so many places you're going to be accessing that with your boat. So if you're accessing it from the Maryland side, they'll be sitting at the ramp waiting for you. I mean, they're not going to come out on the water and get you, but they know you were throwing. They know what you were throwing, and they're going to get you. They're going to, one way, or at least have a conversation. So it's important to understand these rules. I'll follow up with, I'll probably do like a breakdown. I got to pack a bunch of stuff out here now that we're at the end of January, and try and make 2 trips. Because it's just one of those opportunities that you kind of get here before everything starts rolling in the spring, and you got to worry about pre-spawn, and you worry about spawn. You get all that stuff, all that stuff happening in the region, which is really, really great. When the region wakes up, all the rivers wake up, all the grass starts to come in. It's just one of the best exciting times, one of the most exciting times. But just a quick video. Please, again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on TikTok as well, JL Scott Fishing. And if you have any questions, I'm going to put up a poll. See if you ever watch this video. I'm going to put up a poll maybe for a giveaway in terms of states and state laws for the Alabama rig, because it's a big deal. And if you post in the comments, if there's a particular Alabama rig that's out there that you think is better than most in terms of manufacturers out there, post that in the comments. Let people know. I saw some, not a lot. I saw a few at a recent fishing expo. But again, I know that there's a lot of rigs out there. I think Smash Tech, down in Texas, is well known. At least in the last few years or so, for Alabama rigs. But if you know of anyone else to help everybody out in the channel, go ahead and post it in the comments. Post it down, or where you're getting your Alabama rig, or how you rig your Alabama rig, or what swim baits you like to use with your Alabama rig, or how many decoys you like to use, how many blades you like to use, what you like to do, what color blades you like to use, what size blades. All this stuff's fun stuff. It's one of those window opportunities, right, in wintertime fishing that you can just go out and throw the A-rig. Okay? Definitely he's got a bad rep, in some circles, but, in different places. It's definitely effective. I like to do it. Because it's Maryland, a lot of times I'll opt for underspins, and stuff like that. Not have to deal with the Alabama rig, as it does get a pain in the ass. Alabama rigs kind of mess up, get all messed up. Mess your boat up, get hooked on everything, hooked on you, hooked on other line, other rod. It's just one of the biggest pain in the ass baits there is. But it's also one of the most highly effective baits you can throw in the wintertime outside of a jerk bait. Okay, a lot of times, especially when you're busting up bait balls or whatever like that on your lake, all that stuff. It's just fun. But know the laws before you hit the water, mates. All right, mates.